Hi you guys, how you doing? Welcome to lesson 4, build an EDM track from start to finish. Right, and as promised we're going to be teaching you how to make your own sounds in synth, and this will be our lead up or build up synth we're going to use leading into that main section that we built in the last lesson. But as usual, I've just been having a quick look at the track we've got so far, and of course with a fresh pair of ears, just making a slight adjustment again like last time. So if we just click on the distorted snare, I'm just going to solo that for you and play that. I've just added a touch of reverb to that because it was a little bit sitting a little bit too forward in the mix for my liking when I played the whole thing through. So I've just clicked on the distorted snare and we'll click on edit channel settings. And as you can see, I've just added a touch of reverb. So let me just show you that with and without. So as you can see, it sounds a little bit further back now, and when we play the whole thing together, you'll be able to see the difference. Okay, so that's the first thing we've done. These little adjustments come to you usually when you've had a bit of a rest, which is great. The next thing I wanted to just quickly show you is how to name your tracks. It's very, very simple, and I personally like to name my tracks as I go along. Then when I'm in the mixer window, I can see slightly more easier where I want to be or which track I'm on. So this one I'm going to just double click on and call distorted snare. Actually distorted percussion, and this one here is the rim shot. Just play that for you. Yeah, so that's like the rim shot, the outside of the drum there. Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping there for you. That's just the way I like to do things. Some people don't name their tracks at all. Obviously you can just highlight the track and go into the mixer and you'll see it highlighted, but I still like to have the name down the bottom there, rim shot. And the final quick thing before we move on is another little tip for you. Rather than keep flicking to the mixer every time you want to change a volume of a track, you could just highlight the track you wanted. Let's say you want to adjust the rim shot. Just click on fader there and you can adjust it, rather than having to keep flicking over to the mixer window and doing it there. So that's another little tip for you. Okay, so as promised, let's get on with building our own preset in synth. Okay guys, so we need some notes to trigger our synth just before we program the sound in. So let's get your MIDI window up again. And as you can see now, I'm now working on 21 to 45. This is our build-up section. So you want to get to the build-up riff. We've already used the first 5 MIDI channels, if you remember, for the main riff. So you want to bring in the build-up riff on bar 21 on the 6th MIDI down. And we need to, of course, create another synth. So just going to get my VST window up and right click the top and add rack instrument. Another instance of synth. We don't need a MIDI channel because we've already got some. And we just need to assign it, so not connected. Let's put it to the last synth down. And we just need to then go and reset the VST. So let's go to menu and initial preset. So everything is on 0. We can start absolutely from scratch. Let's just hear what the initial patch sounds like. Horrible. So let's get programming. Okay, make sure you've watched lesson 3 where we've gone through how this VST works and all the different parameters in it. So if you haven't watched that, it's a good idea to go back and watch that. So I'm going to start by putting my polyphony up to 8. and my voices up to 8. The more voices, the thicker the sound. Let's listen to that. Let's just turn that down a bit. It's a little bit high for me, so let's put the octave down one. It's better. We're gonna volume's okay. Phase no. We'll put some detune on this. See what it sounds like. Just need to double up that part quickly. Bring this back for now. So we've got this looping all the time. Cool. Right, so I want to be using a saw wave, so that's already on saw, but my B oscillator is not on saw, so let's just change that. Okay. Saw waves are very commonly used for dance lead sounds, so that's why we're using saw. Let's just have a mess around with the envelope. Okay, that sounds okay, but we've got a bit of a problem with the MIDI, I think. I think that's... Yeah, we need a gap of a bar, I think, in there. Yeah, it's not quite the full 8 bars, that riff, so that's fine. Let's just extend that to there. Okay, back to synth. See if we can fatten up oscillator number 2 a little bit here as well. Let's put the voices up again. We'll do some detuning as well. About right there, I think. That's starting to take shape a little bit now. Let's have a little look at the filter. Let's try low pass. You can see how we can affect the sound there, and we can also automate any parameter you see in here. We can automate that, so we haven't got to do it manually. So that's good for later on when we're mixing. Just try a bit of drive. It's just a little bit loud, so I'm just going to come in and turn these A and B down. We're in the red on the meters there. Okay, I just wanted to show you what each oscillator is doing. oscillator 1 is the lower end, as we've got -1 on the octave, and we've kept oscillator 2 as the normal octave, or 1 octave higher I should say, and that's doing the top end. And when you blend them together, we're getting quite a nice sound now. So as I mentioned in the last video, this VST synth has actually got 2 pages to it, so in other words another 2 oscillators to make 4. So why not take advantage of that and try and fatten this up even more? Just going to listen to B, part B on its own, so turn down A. So what we've done there is we've just taken the sort of high end of that oscillator B1, which is the third oscillator we're working on. So we're just layering up a little bit of the top end. Let's see what we can do with oscillator B2, the fourth one. I think something about there is, at the moment, what we're looking for. Was tempted by bringing in a lower oscillator there, a lower octave, but we're going to be putting in some bass to accompany this anyway, to layer it up, so we don't need to put any more bass in this particular synth. Just have a look at the filters again. I quite like putting a low pass on, not 24 dB, 12 dB, so it's not so aggressive. Okay, so you can see how you can build up your own sounds. You can change so many things, and there's no point, unless you're under complete time restraints, I don't recommend going to get presets. You can perhaps go to a preset and then tweak it yourself, but I wouldn't absolutely wouldn't recommend just going to a preset that you've bought and just using that and not changing anything with it, because there's no creativity with that. You're also using a sound that anyone else can use, and if you want to stand out, then it's best to do it yourself. And also, what are you learning by just choosing a preset? It's best to come into a synth like this or Massive and start playing around with it and learning how synthesis actually works, and then you can come up with your own really funky sounds. Speaking of funky sounds, let's just play around, as I said in the last video, this modulation envelope. Let's see what we can do here. I'm just going to mess around on the fly here. Okay, so I've just been messing around quite a lot with all the parameters and the envelopes, the amplitude envelopes and the modulation envelopes. And I've come up with something where if I put the cutoff AB on max under the mod envelope, and if we adjust the main cutoff section, which does filters A and B, you get kind of a nice plinky sound to start with, which we're going to open up with automation into the full synth opening up. So let me just show you what that sounds like. So it kind of opens up into one of them epic kind of dance leads, if you like. So that's cool. We just need a little bit of delay and reverb on this. I think it's just a little bit dry. So just switch on the delay. We'll only put a touch on for now because we could possibly use the nicer VST instruments, sorry, the nicer VST delays and reverbs in Cubase. So that's fine for now. Let's move on. Okay, incidentally, I played this melody in with a keyboard. I don't actually prefer to program the notes in on the side here, but some people do. So when you play it in on the keyboard, you have the weight of your hand on the keys, in other words, the velocity changes. Now that's quite good, I think, because you get a bit of movement in your track. But if you did want to sort that out, you just come down here with the pencil tool and you can change the volume of that particular note right there. And if you wanted them all the same, you would just highlight them all, or Control A, and then come to MIDI, Functions, and do fixed velocity, and they'll all jump to the same volume or same velocity. There's also other options in here to change all the notes so they're the same length, etc., etc. So for the second part of this synth riff, we need to bring in some drums, some claps and percussion. Okay, so let's bring up the audio pool, or Control P, and let's bring in the percussion again. We're going to actually add this onto a drum track. Percussion. to a spare drum track. Just check that we're on the right one. 29. Yep, 29. And we're also going to bring in a clap to go alongside this. So let's just bring in the clap. Okay, sounds like. Okay, obviously we're going to be adjusting these, the way these sound and the volumes, etc. Let's just, nice bit of housekeeping, just bring in the very end of that sample, just quickly. Okay. We want this to be on each beat. It's going to build up. Take off the last three. Okay, so we're just going to reduce the fader here in the arrangement window. They don't sound particularly nice on their own, and they don't sound amazing at the moment together, but I've chosen these sounds for a particular reason. They do blend together once I've got a little bit of distortion on one of them, and this is what I did when I programmed the track originally. So let's go ahead and do that now. Add some studio EQ. Let's just try a bit of Camel Crusher as well. One of my favourite at the moment. It's favourite plugins at the moment. I particularly like Clean Rainbow because there's not too much distortion on it. Just gives you a little bit. I like the brightness I've added there, but let's see what they're like together again. Okay, let's add a bit of reverb. Just try a bit of reverb on the clap. Don't want to swamp it, but we want it standing back a little bit more than what it is. Okay, so the clap sound is just slightly weird. It's slightly late to me. So I zoomed in I made the track bigger by just bringing down the bottom arrow of that track. Zoomed right in, and I'll just undo what I did. You can see that's how the sample started. Intentionally or not, that's not what I wanted. I wanted the clap to start immediately on the downbeat. So that was Control Z, by the way, to undo what I did. So to put it back, it's just Control Shift Z. So I've taken off the first bit of the sample and then moved it across, and then I just highlighted the one beat and just had a little listen to it. And then to compare it, I just moved across my highlighted area. That sounds a little bit later to me. So what I need to do is just grab the rest of these claps, delete them. As you know, we can copy them across, or we can use Control D. Yep, that sounds a bit better to me. That's great. So let's move on. Okay, the next thing we're going to bring in is the snare roll, and we're going to do this at 37, and this will make a nice build up. We're not going to put any effects in yet. That is in a future video. All the sort of white noise effects and everything that holds all the sections together and also provides the tension and release. But having said that, we are going to put in the snare roll now. While we're working on the drums, we might as well. So 37 to 44, and let's bring up the audio pool. Let's just rearrange these windows a little bit. There we go. And we want the snare, the high snare again. And of course the layered snare, which gives it so much body and goodness. Oh, superb. Okay, so let's just zoom in. Now, because we're going to be layering these up, we need to just take off the end of that sample. So it just fits to one beat. You know the drill by now. Copy these across. Then we want it to start doubling up and increasing the energy. So all we've got to do is copy them across again. So I've zoomed in a little bit too much there. Right, we want a little bit of a break before everything kicks in at 45. So we want a little bit of a sort of a mini breakdown, if you like, which really then accentuates the main build up as it comes in at 45. So from here we want to start doubling up. Just make sure we're working on 1/16ths of a bar now. And once we've brought them in, we can then copy them across. This is what it sounds like. Okay. And for the last section, we'll do the same. ring them in half a beat. And let's just see what that sounds like. We want one on the end there as well. And we're just going to keep them highlighted, and we're just going to extend, because I want the actual end on those samples to sound when it comes to the end of that section. Obviously, we're going to be automating the volume on this, and so it's not too full on when it first comes in. Yeah, they're a bit loud at the moment, but we can sort that out. Once we've got the synth build up in there as well, we're also going to do a similar process where we halved the timing. We're going to do a similar process to that on the synth down here. Copy that across. And I just want this last bit. That riff at the end there. So let's just that's the only bit we want. Okay, so let's just zoom out again. Start doubling this up. We're going to have a little vocal sample in there before it kicks in. Okay, so you can hear how it's going to sound. I'm also going to have lots of effects building up, risers and white noises and all sorts of effects to help build that tension as well. So I think that's probably it for this lesson and this build-up section. But what we're going to do in the next session is start adding all the effects, the build-ups and the breakdowns, and also recording a vocal sample and also bringing in a sample from a vocal pack. Okay, see you in the next lesson. Cheers.